Welcome fans, viewers, supporters in all walks of life. I'm here with two-time Olympian Kelita Zupancic. And actually, it's my favorite Olympian right now. I don't want to be biased, but yes, it is my sister. We're lucky to have her on the Autotelic podcast. Yeah, let's welcome Kelita Zupancic here. I'm just gonna kind of give her the floor and just a brief introduction about you and where you're kind of at and where you are here.
Well, I'm pretty excited to be your first person on your podcast to interview. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
I'm not in the country very often, but when I am, I'm always excited to see you and be here. So let's get this rolling. My name is Kelita Zupancic, like he said. I've been pursuing this Olympic dream, which feels like since I've been born. I started in the sport of judo when I was 5 years old, and I grew up watching my father do it, and I think I fell in love from the moment I stepped on the mats.
So I know a lot of stories I've heard before, but I'm gonna bring them up just because I love hearing them so much. But before we kind of move forward, a lot of what I like about the Olympics is that there's some sports you've just never heard of, and you don't know necessarily how they work. And I think judo is one of those sports, whether if you know judo, you know it, but if you don't, you have really no idea of how, the point system works, how you actually get to the Olympics. So could you kind of explain to us, I know you're in a weight class and how the points work, and how I know you're on some sort of circuit to accumulate points to get to the Olympics.
Right.
If you could kind of explain the process to us, that'd be cool.
So for those viewers or listeners who don't know what judo is, it's a martial art, and it started in Japan. Judo is pretty complicated for people who don't know what it is. It's similar to grappling and wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and you basically get points through throwing your opponent to the ground on their back or on their side, and you can win by tap out, which is by arm bar, choke, or a 20-second pin. So the Olympic qualification is a 2-year process. It's an accumulation of your top 6 results each year, and after the first year, your points get cut in half. And for this Olympics, for 2020, they've decided to do top 18 for men and women.
Also both men and women?
Yes.
Because usually
it was top 14 for London and Rio for women, and top 22 for men in the past. So they've now equalized, they've met in the middle and made it a little bit easier for women and a lot harder for men.
Oh, that's good to see.
So, yeah.
So it's funny, you talk about chokes, holding down, throwing, submissions, and it's just such a funny thing. Judo, the actual meaning of judo means the gentle way. So we always kind of laugh about that. Oh, I'm doing this physical combat sport. Meanwhile, it means the gentle way. It's kind of ironic, I guess. It's always funny to...
Well, initially, judo came from jiu-jitsu, which was meant to kill. And they wanted to make a sport out of jiu-jitsu, so that's how judo came about. So technically...
So a friendlier version of jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, a sport version of jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny. So I've come to visit you many times. Right now you're training and living in Boston, and it's funny, people use the expression eat, sleep, and train, and people say that, but there's days, or there's time periods in your days where okay, you're playing video games or you're going to the mall, but when I came to visit you, literally you ate, slept, and trained, which when I came was kind of the first experience I saw of that, so kind of give me a brief day in the life of Kelita with what you would do and all that kind of stuff.
My mindset has definitely changed over the years. I'm training for my 3rd Olympic Games, so I've learned a lot about myself and what works for me. And I'm currently training in Boston, where we train 2 to 3 times a day. If I recall, when you were there, I was training 3 times a day.
And it was your easier
It was my
week.
easier week.
Yeah, you just got back, so it was a little bit easier, which blows my mind. You're still training.
It's probably a recovery week.
Yes. Yeah.
So our mindset right now is to do something, be in the gym every single day, not necessarily maxing out, but recovery days include like movement, and especially for our sport, it's such high impact that we have to do most of our training is injury prevention. So yeah, we start in the gym, technical judo workout, and then we do rounds at night.
So it's funny, for those of you who follow Kelita on social media, or don't already, we'll post her social media, all of her social media contacts. But she has a couple of pictures that have her training, and it's not your usual environment. So I'm gonna just kind of a little bit on it, just a little bit here. Is, you know, you're training in the woods. You have an axe in your hand. You're chopping trees. You know, where does this kind of come from?
Yeah. So this is a new way of training that I've taken up in the last couple of years since I've moved to Boston. In judo and in the weight room, like when you're lifting weights and you have the proper technique, you get really efficient, and it becomes quite easy. But when you're in the woods and you have the elements, you got bugs flying on you, and it's more natural life, whereas in the gym it's more can be robotic sometimes. Like right, when you're picking up a weight or a bar, like you know what to expect. But when your trainer says, "Go pick up that boulder over there, go chop that tree down," it's different every time. And judo is about having all the muscles in your body strong, so it's a different type of strength. We call it, I don't know, farm boy strength. And,
there you go. Yeah, I like that.
Something like that.
So it's funny because it's just something kind of different. It's good to kind of change it up once in a while too, to get outside and get out of the gym. I think it's cool. So yeah, those like I said, follow her on social media if you're not already, and there's some good pictures of her training with her teammates outside doing chopping trees, carrying boulders,
and a lot of ice baths as well for recovery and mental training.
So just recently, you were doing was it the Wim Hof?
The Wim Hof method.
The Wim Hof. So I know you can obviously go and do your own research on it, but I guess give your own, kind of briefly explain what it is, just briefly in terms that people would kind of understand, and kind of go through what you were maybe going through some of these experiences with the Wim Hof method.
So what brought me to this was I suffered a major neck injury last year, and I couldn't train for pretty much 6 months, and I was off the circuit. So I needed to find a different way to train my mind and body because I wasn't able to lift weights or even do judo. So I decided to take up this Wim Hof method. My trainer had some really good results with this, and so I tried it out. It was a different type of breathing. Intense breathing and ice cold therapy. So what else do you want me to?
Yeah, I saw some of your videos, and it's funny, I think I was talking to you and you're like, you can't get into the water until you're fully, let's say relaxed.
Right. So you cannot shiver because the shivering triggers your body and mind to feel cold. So you have to go into this meditative state, and when you come out of the water, you cannot be shaking either, and you have to warm your body up through this intense breathing.
So it's funny for obviously the average person, we go into cold water, even if you stand by, you're in an instant shiver. So
right.
For you to able to learn how to control that is pretty intense and cool, and I'm sure it all, like you said, just trying different methods is always nice for your training.
We also spoke about when you're competing and training, you're at risk for a lot of injury because we're fighting and it's a full contact sport. And being able to train your mind and get that adrenaline rush without being in your physical state being at risk. I'm not at risk of getting injured going into an ice bath, but you're still getting the same effect of mentally training and psyching yourself up and calming your heart down. And it has the same effects, but in a very safe environment, which is very key to stimulating the same effect as you would in a fight.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard this story, but I love it and I always have to bring it up. So when you were in, correct me if I'm wrong, grade 3.
Right.
Was it grade 3?
Yes.
You did an autobiography.
Yes.
And can you kind of explain the significance of this autobiography you did to your journey to your first Olympics?
So when I was in the 3rd grade, it was the year before the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games, and I was already training judo and competing quite often, and the teacher that week asked us to write where we see ourselves in the future. And I remember going home that night and thinking about it, and my father asked me what I was drawing and writing down for my future, and I said the Olympic Games. And we sat there and calculated what year that would be my first one, and that was 2012, and that so happened to be my first one. So the goal was set from the time I was 8-9 years old. Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy. So let's bring us to 2012. Mm-hmm. Like through grade 3 all the way to 2012. Like, did you ever kind of reflect on that moment of when you obviously you're visualizing, you drew yourself on the podium? Was it kind of a thing you always kind of went back to or remembered when I was that little girl, like, I drew this is my dream, like, to keep you on, kind of the path of the Olympic journey?
Yeah, I just remember I had this like deep knowing of what I wanted to do, and I never wavered. And that is pretty interesting because now looking back, there's so much influence from teachers and parents and mentors in your life to go to university, do what your parents want you to do, get the degree they think that it's going to make you the most amount of money, and follow this like cookie cutter mentality where to go to Olympics and do judo and was not really anyone else's dream but mine. And I feel like I was a very stubborn and strong child who knew what she wanted. And I can see now looking back that I was very hard to change.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that you're stubborn and, driven, because I was just going to follow up with when you were through elementary school, like, talking to one of your best friends, like Kelita was training at recess. She would give us like piggybacks as always, like training. So it's funny how, that stubbornness and that mindset of, I'm going to go against what the norms are, and this is all, this is for me, and you kind of stuck with it. And something so simple, going out at recess and training, even though the Olympics was, who knows when it could have came, and what year and all that funny stuff. So to be at recess training with your girlfriends, your boyfriends, whatever.
Yeah, my best friend Laura. It was funny. She got married last summer, and we're like, oh my God, I was training. She helped me train for Olympics when I was like 8 years old. It's crazy to think that she believed me and we were doing it then.
You're crazy.
I'm still doing it 20 years later. Yeah.
So it's kind of funny we're talking about, such a young age, you visualized this and you wrote it down. But for those who don't know, Kelita was actually was a good hockey player. She actually played boys AAA hockey growing up and was quite competitive with that. And eventually, and a lot of you younger athletes, I'm sure have experienced this or will experience a time where when you're multiple sports, eventually, you have to choose one or the other because it just becomes too much, and you really have to put your focus on the one, to achieve the highest level possible in that sport. So was it 18 or 16?
It was 16.
16 years old, you had to make this decision. Am I going to try to go to university, get a scholarship for hockey, or am I going to follow this Olympic dream of going to judo? Kind of tell us about that as a 16-year-old having to make, probably one of the biggest decisions of your life up to that point, or career-wise.
Definitely.
What was going through what was your thought process, as well as what made you come to the decision you came to?
So as any young Canadian, I ended up playing more hockey than I did judo, and judo was just so natural for me. But hockey, on the other hand, although I was able to play such a high level, I had to do a lot of extra training, and it just wasn't as natural for me. So when I was 16 years old, That was the draft year for the OHL for the guys.
Yes.
And so I switched over to the women's league because I had no intention of being... Anyway, so yeah, I weighed the pros and cons, and it took me 3 months to decide, the full summer. And once September hit, I was back in school, and I had a lot of scouting competitions, tournaments in the U.S. for the hockey, and NCAA recruitment. Letters were coming in, and I was being asked to compete in Europe and represent Canada for judo across the sea. So, yeah, it was a very hard decision. I weighed the pros and cons. I tried to not let anyone else's opinions affect me, and I decided, what could I wake up happy every day and do, and be the most successful at.
And I think that's a really good point there is, people are going to tell you to do this, go this way, and do that, and this is how things should be done. And I think it's, at the end of the day, sticking to your guns and knowing what you want is a big part of life. And whether that's picking, do I play this sport? Do I play that sport? Do I go in this job? Do I go in that job? Do I go to school? Do I do this? Is such just a life experience. And I think is a good point, pick and choose the advice you get, but at the end of the day, stick to your guns.
Well,
and
do what makes you happy.
Do what makes you happy is at the end of the day, I think is most important. And regardless of what you choose, if you go with that, I think it's usually the right decision, regardless of the outcome and where it takes you.
Yeah, I find throughout my career, when I make the choice, it always turns out to be the best decision I make, whether I fail or succeed. When I've taken other people's advice and put it before my own, that's when I've been led in the wrong direction.
So I wanted to kind of touch base, since we're kind of talking about school and stuff, and as the years go on, you're establishing yourself as went to the 2012 Olympics, was your first one. And I don't know if it was before or after. I just wanted to touch on this. Was a girl in high school from your hometown high school, All Saints. I don't know how she contacted you, but she did a big project on you, correct?
Oh, when I came back from the 2012 Olympics.
Was it when you came back?
Right.
So I thought it was cool, just to the impact that you have on, young girls, athletes in general. To have a girl do a full project on you, I think she had all your newspaper articles, your pictures, all on a Bristol board. So I know you went into the school as she did her presentation. So, how does that make you feel, knowing that people are looking up to you and doing, like I said, a simple thing as a school project on, Canadian Olympic athlete in the sport of judo, which is not, like I said, not everybody's familiar with?
Well, I don't think it really matters what sport you do. When you go to the Olympics, it's the biggest stage in the world, and everyone's watching for those 2-3 weeks that it's happening. And you don't have to necessarily know the sport to be inspired by someone. Just the hard work that you see that's been put in for the person to get there, and whether they're from your hometown or not, the ones that leave the biggest impact on you, even if they win or lose, it doesn't matter.
Oh yeah, and that's, I think, the biggest thing, leaving that mark on someone. Like you said, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. Whether it's a message you give out, or a video they see of you, can touch people in different ways, and every person is kind of different where what they grab through something. It's not always, you on the podium with a medal, what I mean? It can be you posting a picture, dying on the mat because you just did a training session, you know what I mean? To inspire people. Just it comes in different ways and forms. Even
just being from Whitby, walking through the opening ceremonies, it can touch people, and you just never know who's watching. And I was totally that little girl at home watching the Olympics, being inspired and motivated by these people.
And that's, at the end of the day, that's, I think, what it's all about. It's just motivation, motivating.
And I couldn't tell you what color medal they won, or if they even won at all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now I want to kind of move into kind of some of your big accomplishments. One that sticks out to me because I know you're traveling around the world. It's sometimes for us at home to, you know, get a chance to watch you. At home is very rare. So it was the Pan Ams here in Toronto.
2015.
2015. We got a group of us to come down.
The whole family.
The whole family. And it's funny because it seemed like back when we were, you know, 6 or 7 going to a tournament, you know what I mean? And all of us kind of competing, you know, packing up the lunch bags,
it's
shoving
funny.
in the car, piling in the car.
It's funny you say that because I was in China about a month ago competing, and I'm going out there and I'm like, oh my God, I've been doing this since I was 8 years old. I still feel sometimes like that 8-year-old kid putting on my judo gi, going out to fight. Yeah.
So
I can relate to that feeling. Sometimes I'm in disbelief myself.
So I'm going to kind of go through, like, there was obviously our experience as the fans, you know, you get to see Kelita, she's here, and, you know, it's been years since we got to see you compete in a tournament at home. Yeah. So we're all very excited, you know, we had our t-shirts on and all of that. So
Team Canada t-shirts, yeah.
Team Canada t-shirts. So obviously, you know, match by match, obviously you're doing well. And I think it was the finals. Actually, there was a couple moments.
I had some rivals.
Yes. And I want to bring up a Rocky reference.
Okay.
Because I love Rocky, and the expression they use, "Eye of the Tiger."
Right.
I love that, and I truly believe, like, that day, like, there's some you can probably go on the internet, Google, and I know there's pictures of Kelita at the Pan Ams fighting, like, just the look in her eyes and the focus, like, it was Rocky. It's the Eye of the Tiger. And I remember the final match, you were actually down, and I knew, like,
I think I was down in all my matches except for the first one.
Yeah.
And the odds of coming back are always against you.
And you had this look in your eyes and determination, like, you were going to win. Like, you could see it. So for us in the stands to see that, we see it on your face, but as they call it, what you say, it's a judoka. What kind of prep do you do going into such a big event, and as well as the pressure of your hometown? What's kind of your prep for that tournament?
Well, just to talk about the Eye of the Tiger, it's funny because my coach, Nicholas Gill, who coached me for the 2012 and 2016 Olympics, he always said he could tell if I'm on or off when he saw my eyes in a match right before. So you're not the only one. And I'm sure you can tell that with a lot of athletes. They say, like, your eyes are like looking into someone's soul, or I'm not sure exactly what that quote is, but yeah. What was the question again? What was my mindset going into 2015? Well, I've always competed well when I've been surrounded by friends and family. I find that it's not just, it's a good type of pressure. I perform best when there's more people watching. And I think that's a pretty awesome quality to have. And especially when my family is there. Yeah. So I was really, really excited to compete. And I think that love and that good energy just gave me an extra confidence into the day.
It was like, because I grew up playing hockey, and, like, even any sport, the crowd can be the extra player on the field, so to speak. So almost like we were the extra guy giving that, like, little extra boost while you were out there competing.
Yeah. It's totally perspective too. It's how you look at it. And I've always looked at friends and family and in the stands as a positive and not a negative.
And it's funny, we remember asking, "Oh, did you see us in the crowd? Like, we were waving." You're like, I didn't know where you guys were. I thought you were over here, but meanwhile we were on the opposite side. So it's kind of funny. You, like,
oh yeah,
had no idea.
I had no idea where you guys were until I think my last final match,
and it's
or
funny,
semifinal.
And I think that just goes to, like, the whole being in the zone and blocking out everything, and focusing on that key moment, that key match.
Throughout my career, I've had a lot of practice with that, tuning out the crowd, being in the moment, and that starts that takes years of practice and preparation for a lot of athletes. It doesn't come naturally all the time, but dealing with the pressure, like you said, I've already fought in Olympic Games. Going into my second ones, I was used to pressure and had lots of practice at it.
So for, like I said, I'm a hockey player, for those who don't know. When we're in the playoffs, they say, okay, you can't get too high, you can't get too low.
Right.
But hockey, you have one game, you have like a day to kind of think about it, and then get ready for the next one. Whereas judo, you can have, say, 5 matches to the finals. So
all in one day. So how do you when you win, how do you keep focused, don't get too high and all excited, because now you have a whole new, different opponent to get right back into the focus with that person. How do you do that? And if you lose, how do you not get too down on yourself and recover for the next fight in such a short period of time? Well, it's training. I have to do this every day and put myself in that mindset, and also learning to use that momentum into your next fight. And a lot of it has to do with like heart rate. Learning to control your heart rate. If you're too excited and your heart rate's pumping too fast, or your nerves are so bad and your heart rate's going through the roof, well, there goes all your cardio. Doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
I've had a lot of times where I've competed at the World Championships or super stressful events where I couldn't control my heart rate and my nerves, and coaches or friends and family saying, were you out of shape for that?
Yeah. And
there's no way. When you see people gas in the first 30, 45 seconds, you know that it's not because they're out of shape, it's the nerves, and their heart's been racing at 100 miles an hour for the last hour.
And that's where I think it's, as a spectator, those are the things we don't see or realize, and we just think, oh, she was having a bad day, but the prior match, put you like this and you didn't control it the best you should have. And it's funny, those little things that as an audience member, we think we know what actually happened, but really we have no idea.
And that goes back to the basics of just learning how to breathe, learning to like go into an ice bath in a meditative state, coming out and controlling it again. These are things I'm working on every single day at practice. Very conscious of your breath, because that controls your heart and that controls how you're going to perform. So it's a daily thing, practicing how to control this.
And it's funny you say that, because you're at the Olympic Games, all these athletes are training just as hard as you, if not harder, on all their skills and techniques. It then becomes it's a mental game, who can stay in their zone and in their prep, and outdo the other person mentally a lot of the times.
Yeah, and it's just that one day of your life.
And the one day, then that's the beauty of the Olympics,
so
right? So
that's like the pressure and what we work towards. Regardless, right now we're on the road. We're not peaking for anything. We're just training through events. So you're never at your 100% top of your game. And that's what prepares you for the Olympics, because on the Olympics you are peaking and you will be at the best of your game. So it will be easy.
So you're talking about, you've been doing this for so long and experience. So let's go back to your first Olympics. And you were 22, which is
young.
In judo is very young.
Very young, yeah.
Your first Olympics. And, I remember you having to fight the last couple tournaments to make sure you got enough points to get in.
Right.
And then you saw your draw. And lo and behold, you had the number 1 girl in the world.
Right.
So knowing that before, the tournament.
The 3-time world champion leading up to the Olympic Games.
So
defeated once in 4 years.
Give us a little bit of how you prepped for that one.
I was so young, I didn't know what to expect. So I was really relying on the coaching staff to guide me through that process.
But what about regards to like pressure? Sometimes as an underdog is a nice position sometimes to be in.
Yeah, it was funny because when I saw the draw, and I started laughing because I got the hardest draw possible. And I said, I must have a big lesson to learn here. And I took it as an opportunity for growth. And like you said, if you look at the stats for judo, the odds of the number 1 person actually winning are like something ridiculous, like 20%. Or like the odds are really low because there's so much pressure on that one person. And I just decided to give my 100%. That's all you can do. That's the mindset I had.
And it was sure enough, it
was a tight match to the last couple seconds.
I think there was like maybe 15 seconds left. I think one of the girls, it could have been the biggest upset of the Olympics. And it was right there.
Her coach was yelling at her before she even got off the mats. And as I was leaving the stadium that day, she was from France, and the French media asked me for an interview as I was leaving the building. And they just said, that was you almost upset our superstar. And hope to see you at the next Olympics.
So that was your first one.
Yeah.
Before we go on to your second one, I remember you coming home, telling us your stories, and I remember you telling us one of your teammates looked at you. I think it was in the closing ceremonies. I could be wrong, but he looked at you and he said, "Kelita, see how you can't just do one."
Oh, the addiction of the Olympic Games. Yeah, well, first of all, 22 was so young, so to stop my career at that point was would seem like a waste. I had to do one more, or now on to the third one. Oops.
Yeah, so, like you said, how can you stop your journey there? And after that one, you gained, like you said, so much experience. So now going into 2016 in Brazil with, higher seeding for your rankings going in, meaning better, a little bit of a better draw. I mean, there's never really a good ideal draw.
Yeah.
But going to this one, okay, what's the kind of the mindset and the mental preparation and strategy for this one, being a little more seasoned?
So in judo, there is a world ranking, and from there, the top 8 get seeded into the draw, which means the top 8 won't fight each other in the first couple rounds. So my goal was to no longer just make the Olympics, it was to get seeded at the Olympic Games. And so I got seeded going into 2016, and I accomplished that goal. But it was interesting because the number 1 girl ranked was the Japanese girl, and in December before the games in August, she tested positive for a drug, and they let her come back to fight the Olympics. But because she didn't compete after that December, she dropped out of the top 8 and was no longer ranked. So the number 1 girl was no longer seeded. So anyone could draw her. And I so happened to draw her in the second round.
And that's, like you said, another lesson to take from that experience.
Just another tough draw. So it's, again, I was like laughing, like, what the heck? Like, I have to get the hardest, toughest draw. And you know what? You're at the Olympic Games and you're thinking, this is what I'm here for, to fight the top girls in the category. And so in both my Olympic Games, I fought the Olympic champ in the first and second round. So it's quite interesting. I think this time going into my third Olympics, both these girls have retired, and it's my turn to be that number 1 spot.
So
I think I should be on top. I always end up on the top of the draw, so this time I think the roles are going to reverse, and I think it gets that number 1.
Almost like the girl who's going to face you is going to be like, why do I always end up with the top one, and hopefully that top one is obviously will be you. And
yeah.
So first of all, I'm going to ask, you did your second Olympics,
right?
And it's emotional, roller coaster, highs, lows, all of the above. We're fortunate our family was able to go down and support her, and it was an amazing time. And the big question is,
what's that?
Are you going to do another one?
Right.
Which is, I feel bad, but it's like people are going to ask these questions. They want to know sooner than later. But I know it's one of those things that have to digest. But it's
another 4 year.
It's another 4 years of preparation, and you're getting a little older, and there's might be more you want to do in life.
Was 26 old?
No, you'll be getting for another 4 more years. You'll be getting older.
Yeah.
So that's always a big question, and with kind of here at the Autotelic Mindset, a lot of it is living in the present, being in the present moment, and as an athlete, enjoying the journey and trying to stay focused 1 year at a time, 1 day at a time. 4 years is a long time, but to break, obviously you have to set your goals for the Olympics, but you also have to, it's one day at a time, one tournament at a time to get you there, because it's such a big process. How do you take day by day, month by month, year by year, leading up to the Olympics without getting, too far ahead of yourself?
Right. My boyfriend and I, Travis Stevens, he's also my coach. This third time is very different because I'm in Boston. My boyfriend's coaching me. He won his medal in Rio. Third time's a charm. So I'm hoping to repeat that pattern and match him in that. We talk about that a lot, and that's how we help each other. And we talk about this last third Olympic Games. One key thing, we've done it twice, and to take the pressure off is to not really care and just, like you said, enjoy it, because I only have 2 more years left. I looked at the countdown today, 749 days to opening ceremonies, and that's not a lot of time. And we find that the pattern in our career is the more we enjoy it, the more the results come. And when you don't care about the result, you perform, because you take that extra stress, that fear stress, and you compete with that love energy. And that's easier said than done, but that's the perspective that helped him. That was the biggest thing in his career, I would say, as his girlfriend, that helped change him and put him to the next level to win his medal, because that's mental. We were all in the best shape, so the perspective,
And that's here with the Autotelic Mindset, is truly being in the present moment, and that's kind of what you're explaining here. Putting all the worries aside. But it's funny you talk about stress, where stress can, when you say the word stress, can be very negative, but there's a lot of positive stress, leading up to a match or a fight. That is actually, being stressed is a good thing. And if you weren't stressed, you might question yourself, what's wrong. So, all about controlling those levels, like you're talking before, your energy levels, not getting too high, too low, and where you want them is an interesting point you make, with just living in the moment, being a little more carefree, and just let things happen naturally.
Well, as you go older too, you get to know yourself a little better, and with that comes confidence, inner confidence in who you are and what you stand for and what you're fighting for, and all the reasons why you're doing it. And that it's no longer about just me. I have a team of people every single day helping me, my trainer, my boyfriend, my family, my coaches, my friends. I'm just not one person. This is a huge thing for a lot of people, and a lot of people are invested.
That's cool you say that, because judo, for you who don't know, it's an individual sport, and to emphasize the word team is pretty cool. And each person plays a small part, but together it's the team that helps you get there. So
Absolutely.
To be an individual sport but talk about team, I think is very unique. And like you said, you have one person who's your conditioning coach, you have your technical coach, and each little bit here and there is a piece of the puzzle, and allowing you to get better. But in judo, I know, training partners, those people don't go unrecognized.
Oh, definitely not. I can't do judo without a partner. I'm not a sport where I can just swim or run, or I need other people to help me get better every single day.
And just in life in general, surrounding yourself with the people you want there, that bring you up, is very important. Like we're talking here in sports, but business, as an individual, just in life, like you said, families and friends is very important. And it's cool that we're talking about it here as a judoka who's has to go out there by themselves, but has a huge team behind them.
Huge team, and everyone plays such an essential role and key part of my success.
So I have to ask you, because I know in every sport there's superstitions, there's routine prep that you do, and I gotta ask you about the braid.
Oh, my braided hair.
When did this start? Is it a superstition thing? Why do you do it? How did that kind of all begin? I'm very curious.
Oh, my mom always braided my hair as a little girl, and it's literally the only hairstyle that keeps the hair out of my face when I'm fighting. So That's why.
Yeah, so if you see Kelita compete, you'll know what I'm talking about. Just something I want to kind of bring up to see if it's a superstition thing, because I've never ever seen you compete without the braid.
And messy braids are in, aren't they? Yeah.
So that's a little bit about you know, the 2 Olympics you've done, and obviously you're training hard for the next one. I want to talk about you know, your motto, your campaign. You've kind of started that you've developed over, I think, did it start in 2012 for the 2012, or was it
after 2012?
After 2012.
Yeah.
Hashtag sweating gold.
Right.
I want to ask you what that means for you.
For me, this is we sat down one day in my kitchen, my family's kitchen, and we all discussed this motto that I wanted to start. And sweating gold it's that love for what you do, the sparkle in your eye every day, and doing your best. And it was just our version. And
I think that's what I truly like. I love this because it's so relatable to anyone and anything, and just sweating gold, you know, just like you said, doing the best each day. And there's so many interpretations you can use from it, which I love. But you know, if you follow Kelita on social media, if you're going to follow her, hashtag sweating gold. You know, it's her motto, and
it's my mindset.
Her mindset, and it has a great message behind it, and you can kind of interpret it however you would like. That's kind of meaningful to you. Just I think it's a great little motto. And when we went to her last Olympics, we had our T-shirts, sweating gold, and everyone was asking, "Where'd you get those T-shirts? That's so cool." I'm like, you know, we're supporting Kelita Zupancic, sweating gold. So yeah, just remember hashtag sweating gold. Like I said, follow Kelita on social media. I think it's an awesome little tagline.
My Instagram and Twitter is just my name, at Kelita Zupancic.
So yeah, we'll post. Yeah, well, it's at Kelita Zupancic, and we'll make sure to post those on the website. So another kind of topic I want to bring up with you, because it's out there right now. It's a hot topic, I would say, around the world. Is you know, you're in a combat sport. For a female with you know big biceps and is very chiseled, I'm just gonna say the word out loud, like you're like jacked.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that term. And sometimes girls, women, female, don't see that as being sexy or cool or good looking. Mm-hmm. But you really through your social media have kind of shouted out, like, this is sexy, this is who I am, you know, take it or leave it, and this is the new beautiful, so to speak. Right. And I think that's so important for young girls who are athletes, and it's okay to look muscular. Yeah.
This is something from a young age my mother corrected right away. I remember coming home from crying, being made fun of, like, "You're such a man, Kelita." I think I was in the 7th grade. That's what they would always call me. "You're such a man." And my mom said, "Well, don't you train to be strong like a man?" And I said, "Yeah." So she's like, "So isn't that technically a compliment?" And I'm like, "Yes." So again, it was just like a perspective switch. And, you know, I worked so hard every single day to be muscular and strong. And I think just the world right now, like, everyone's perspective is switching, whether you see, like, through martial arts, like the UFC, there's more women, and the CrossFit. Strong is sexy, and there's a lot of power in that, and being in shape, and
100%.
I'm very proud. Obviously, I'm a female and human, and I have my own insecurities some days, but I'm pretty fortunate. I'm constantly surrounded by other athletes who are jacked and are very proud of their muscles. So I'm in my own environment. Yeah.
I think it's just
I'm well surrounded.
Great message and like you said, it's starting to, women and girls are starting to see that is, you know, that's beautiful, and don't be ashamed to have those nice muscles.
No shame.
So when you're not competing, training, and all that jazz, what are some of your other hobbies, interests? I'm just going to tell the viewers and audience right now, Kelita has a mild obsession. A huge obsession about her pet dog, Trapper the Bulldog.
Yes.
Follow him on social media too.
At Wrinkly Trapper.
So yeah, what kind of obviously you have a dog who is still, is he even one yet?
He's 1.5.
He's one English Bulldog?
English Bulldog.
So I know he takes up a lot of your time, so give us some of the things you do with him, and just some of your interests and hobbies outside of the judo world.
So part of being a high performance athlete, and I think just being a successful human being, it's hard to find balance. A work, social life, family life, friends, balance. And for me, it's finding that time with my boyfriend. So we've had to create twice a week date nights. And it's just finding what's right for you and where your endpoints are and what's causing you to break down. And I think that changes as you grow up and your circumstances. But for right now in my life, it's having those date nights and making sure that we're talking and spending time together, not just through FaceTime or texting, but face-to-face quality time is really important for me right now in my life. Yeah.
And it's cool you mentioned that, because on my website, you'll see I mentioned I have this thing called the balance board. And, you know, you have your different categories, you know, sport, career, self, relationship, and whatever that is. And, you know, that's essentially life. And trying to keep that board balanced as much as possible is, you know, it's life, and you're going to have slips here and there. But it's very important that you make time outside of your sport to go see friends and family, to see your significant other, to fill up the other parts of the board and maintain that balance. Because if you come too focused on one area, the other areas will suffer, as well as the area you're putting all your effort in, I think, belief. So having that, maintain that balance and focus on the other sides of the balance board is very key. And
it's different for everyone.
It's different for
and it's always changing. And sometimes you don't know until everything falls apart. And sometimes you can catch the pattern right away, but it's catching those patterns and not creating those patterns. Yeah, but that comes with self-awareness too. And as athletes, we're constantly having to be hyper aware of our nutrition, heart rate, like mental state, physical state, like all these different states, and you need to make sure that you're
And for my concept, autotelic mindset, I think that's really what sums it up, you know, is finding that balance and living in those precious moments, learning from them, and adjusting to what's thrown at you, and just living the best possible life you can, and being the best person you can. It's obviously easier said than done, but creating that balance and learning from it, I think, is huge with our approach here with the autotelic mindset. And I think that's a kind of a great point that led into the balance board.
For my balance board, before I go off and compete, a lot of times I go over my 4 stage, which are my mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And I need to make sure that everything is balanced so that when I go off and compete, nothing is surprising me in the last moments before I go out, because that seems to be the case when I compete. Everything sort of surfaces day of with all this adrenaline, and anything that's bothering me in my life comes to me, whether that day or the day before. And I just have to go through myself and sit down and make sure I'm taken care of in all those 4 areas.
And I think that's kind of a great way to kind of tie all of our points that we've kind of touched on through the balance of life. And you know, it's been an honor to, you know, have you here. Like I said, you're not here that often, so to have a little bit of time to sit down and chat has been awesome.
I'm happy to be your first guest, and
broke the ice today. So we want to just kind of for Kelita, her Instagram is Kelita Zupancic, and same as her Twitter account. And then if you really want to follow her English Bulldog that she's obsessed with, it's Wrinkly Trapper on Instagram. And like I said, we will post these for you on the website.